Hello everyone, we are in your history books on page 54 and we're going to read until page 56. During 1915, the Germans and the Allies tried several offensives or attacks against each other. None of these were successful. The Western Front remained deadlocked. So the war continued. The Western Front was only one part of the war. In the East, France and England had wanted to open a supply route to Russia. The route would go through a peninsula in Turkey. The peninsula, or piece of land almost surrounded by water, was called Gallipoli. The Allies made an unsuccessful attempt to take control of Gallipoli. The Russian army had retreated from the smaller German army. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, the Germans were winning. On the high seas, the British Navy swept the sea clear of German surface ships. So the Germans used submarines called U-boats. These boats traveled underwater to sink enemy ships. Now let's skip page 55 for a moment and go to page 56. More nations joined the alliances. The Lusitania was a passenger ship traveling from New York to Liverpool, England. On May 7, 1915, a German U-boat torpedoed the ship. Over 1,000 people died when the ship sank. 128 of them were Americans. Americans were shocked and angry. Some felt that the Germans had disobeyed important warfare laws. The ship had been unarmed and had carried defenseless passengers. Many Americans believed that the United States should become involved in the war. Before the war, Italy had been part of the Triple Alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary. After the Lusitania was sunk, Italy joined the war on the side of the Allies. The Allies promised Italy lands in Austria, Africa, and Turkey if they won the war. The offer was too good for the Italians to refuse. Some nations joined the Central Powers. Turkey joined after defeating the British at Gallipoli. Bulgaria joined just in time to help the Central Powers defeat Serbia. In the East, the Central Powers were winning. So now we have Allies, France, Russia, Great Britain, and Italy. Central Powers are Germany, Austria-Hungary, Turkey, and Bulgaria. Now let's go back to page 55. Writing poems. A soldier huddled on the dirt floor of an Allied trench. He held his pen in his hand. Distant machine gun fire rattled like popcorn. Somewhere a shell exploded. A man's cry of pain echoed over the battlefield. The soldier closed his eyes for a moment. He ran his hand over his damp brow and began to write. Our brains ache in the merciless iced east winds that knife us. Wearied, we keep awake because the night is silent. Low, drooping flares confuse our memory of the salient. Worried by silence, sentries whisper, curious, nervous, but nothing happens. Watching, we hear the mad gust tugging on the wire, like twitching agonies of men among its brambles. Northward, incessantly, the flickering gunnery rumbles. Far off, like a dull rumor of some other war, what are we doing here? People often write poems to express something in a new way. The poems written during World War I help us to understand how people felt about the war. Wilfred Owen wrote many of the best poems about World War I. He died shortly before the war ended. In a famous poem called In Flanders Field, John McCrae expressed his feelings about the soldiers who died. In Flanders Field the poppies blow between the crosses row on row that mark our place. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. For bonus bucks, you may look up on the internet and try to find some more poems from World War I and bring them in tomorrow.